Hey folks, Brian here, coming to you from my top secret hideout. Thank you for watching, like, share, subscribe. I lead the senior adult group at church, and I'm doing a series called Then Sings My Soul. And each week I'm looking at a different hymn, just looking at the story behind it, the inspiration, the theology of it, the lyrics, those kind of things. And I'll bring that to you each week. So I started with Amazing Grace, a powerful story written by John Newton. John Newton was born in London in 1725. His father was a shipmaster in the Mediterranean. His mother, Elizabeth, died when he was 6 years old of tuberculosis. That back then they called it consumption. But he was only 6 years old when his mom died. He spent some time in boarding school and then went to live in Essex at the home of his father's new wife. At age 11, he went to sea with his father for the first time, and he made 6 voyages with him before his father retired in 1742. So at that time, John was 17, and he signed on with a merchant ship sailing to the Mediterranean. And he had quite a way with words even at that time, before his conversion. He had disagreements with colleagues that resulted in him almost being starved to death, being imprisoned while at sea, chained like the slaves that they carried. He himself was enslaved for a time, forced to work on a plantation in Sierra Leone before he was rescued. Another ship found him. And then he was aboard this ship Greyhound, and he gained notoriety as being one of the most profane men the captain had ever met. So that's quite a distinction. So in a culture where sailors habitually swore, Newton was admonished several times for not only using the worst words the captain had ever heard, but creating new ones to exceed the limits of verbal debauchery. So he had quite a way with words already. In March of 1748, while the Greyhound was in the North Atlantic, they got caught in a violent storm. One of the sailors was swept overboard. They're bailing water, and Newton prayed, "Lord, have mercy upon us." It was basically one of those things like, "Lord, if you'll get me out of this, I'll serve you from now on." So he did. About 2 weeks later, the battered ship and starving crew landed in Ireland. And for several weeks before the storm, Newton had been reading The Christian's Pattern, which is a summary of the 15th century The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. And he remembered that prayer. That memory stayed with him of that prayer that he'd uttered, "Lord, have mercy on us." And he began to ask if he was worthy of God's mercy or if any way redeemable. But he came to believe that God had sent him a profound message and had begun a work through him. But his conversion was not immediate. He continued in the slave trade, transporting slaves from Africa to North America. But after three more shipping voyages in the slave trade, at the age of 30, he left sailing and never sailed again. And then he was working as a customs agent in Liverpool, starting in 1756. And he began to teach himself Latin, Greek, and theology. And he and his wife immersed themselves in their church community, and his passion was so impressive to his friends, they suggested that he become a priest in the Church of England. But he was turned down for that by the Archbishop of York, ostensibly for having no university degree, although more likely reasons were his leaning towards evangelism and his tendency to socialize with Methodists. And that's what it says. I would understand that now, but anyway, Newton continued his devotions, and after being encouraged by a friend, he wrote about his experiences in the slave trade and his conversion. He did eventually become an associate pastor in Olney, say that right? Olney, O-L-N-E-Y, Buckinghamshire. And his preaching was unique because he included so much of his own experiences. Most clergy would preach from a distance, not admitting anything in their own lives, but he worked his story into it. And he was very involved with parishioners' lives, and they loved him so much. And his writing, he developed his writing, began writing hymns, which is the songs. And the lyrics to Amazing Grace were written in late 1772 and probably used in a prayer meeting for the first time on January 1st, 1773. So there's actually more verses, but these are the original 6, the ones that we know. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe this far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Yea, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine. And then there's a final verse that we sing. It's nearly always sung, but it wasn't present in Newton's writings. Newton didn't write it. If you notice, it's in plural. Everything up till then was singular. But this verse is plural. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. That additional stanza had been sung with the song before, but it appeared in print the first time in 1851 in the abolitionist periodical, The National Era, and it was part of a 40-week serial, which was Uncle Tom's Cabin. So that's where it first appeared in print, and so that showed, that was used with the abolitionists because of his, and he went on to become very active against the slave trade in England. And years later, on his deathbed, 82 years old, mostly blind, memory failing, this is attributed, some say it's his last words, but he was very, very near the end of his life. He said, "My memory is nearly gone. I remember 2 things very clearly. I am a great sinner, and Christ is a great Savior." And that's the truth. And you know what? If you have not experienced that amazing grace, the grace that transformed John Newton from a foul-mouthed slave trader to a godly pastor, preacher, writer, and abolitionist. If you haven't experienced that grace, you can, because as he said, Christ is a great Savior. Receive Christ as your Savior. Let him redeem you with his amazing grace. If you've stuck with me this long, do that today if you haven't. You can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the comments and a couple of resources also. If you want to experience that amazing grace that John Newton experienced, I've experienced, and know the saving power and redeeming power of Jesus Christ. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, stay salty, my friends.